the big lie is what the corporations are telling us and really shoving down our throats. But that's the big lie, and that's where the problem is. And what happens, the diet programs send you food with smaller morsels of the same poison, salt, oil, and sugar, SOS. You know, SOS it signifies save our ship, right, in the ocean. So really it shows that it's danger when someone puts out an SOS signal. So when you see SOS, salt, oil, and sugar, you can't get away from it. You know, even the healthiest things that they proclaim in these advertisements, the healthy foods are laden with that. So you go to a restaurant, they eat all salt, oil, and sugar. So here it is. The one answer is to have one ingredient, not synthetic things made by man or woman or whatever, but, you know, they have doctors and scientists and psychologists, nutritionists spend all day and billions of dollars to figure out what gets you addicted. Do you realize the chemicals in it is like 50 ingredients in this? It's called processed food, and a lot of those chemicals go right into your brain and release the dopamine. They have it all figured out. So we get addicted to it. But when we have this spiritual awakening, God consciousness, we'll start to realize we don't want that poisonous food, which are chemicals. God's natural food. Our body's God's temple. So that's how the steps relate to our addiction. Even if you're restricting food, it's a compulsion towards food, whatever it is. So we have to look at it in a way through our spiritual way of looking at it. And not, you know, just enough food to live, right? Not living all day, that's what we do, just to eat. Think about that. So the whole answer to the whole problem is this, and what we've just been talking about. We needed the spiritual fitness, and spiritual fitness means that when we make it all about our spirituality. We have prayer meditation. So if you're sitting there and you're into meditation and you're letting all of these thoughts go, things again, you know, calling the 7 deadly sins, gluttony being one of them, or being gluttonous against for things in life, lusting and pride being number one, the ego. The ego says, I got a great idea, I'll eat all this food, I'll be happy. I'll get all this money, I'll get all these people. Never works, never will, only more misery. You know yourself with the food addiction. It's 10 times worse on the other side. It's momentary pleasure. Like the man who climbed Mount Everest, that's why I use that example. You know, it's going to be momentary, but the thing is when we have the perception change, we don't even want that anymore. You know, why would we want, look, for example, the guy who climbed Mount Everest, would you want to spend all your money and get all frostbite just to get to the top of a crazy mountain? Does that make sense? So when the perception changed, when the guy realized he could be happy on his couch, so we could be happy spiritually and fill ourselves up with spiritual bread, I like to call it. And then we say, well, instead of this food, I'm just going to enjoy the day, go out and enjoy nature. And then the perception changes. Then we really see, when we're centered, we can see it for what it is. It all has to do with just letting go. And spiritual fitness, actually spiritual fitness really is letting go. So during the day, and I use the water as an example all the time, we can have spiritual fitness, starting right here. Think about this and glorify when you drink it. This is God's gift. Not a drink with 1,200 or 1,000 calories in it that these coffee shops have, or wherever you get them, what it could be, ice cream drinks, all this crazy stuff. After a while, we wouldn't want that. We'll find our health and happiness from the clarity. And it's so delicious, water. And you have that mindset, this alone will be an amazing diet. If once during the week you have that perception change. You know, regular water. Come to our free Zoom meeting. See info in description. Now back to our video. Everything, and I always have the fruits and vegetables and all of that. I eat all those vegetables. They're so delicious, but you can't taste it because your palate is inundated and it's poisoned and clogged up with the other foods. So you can't go out and have a pastry and then expect to enjoy God's gift. And also I say with sugar addicts. If you liked the video so far, press the like and subscribe button. I say this is God's gift of sugar here. These foods, the fruits and vegetables, actually vegetables are delicious. If you taste certain vegetables, and it's pretty amazing. And grains from the ground. I'm whole food plant-based, and I just want to emphasize, as I always do, whatever type of program you're on, it's what you put on the food. We could all say and agree that it's the processed foods. And I say, look, until I realize where the problem was, if you have a car and the transmission is bad, but you keep on fixing the carburetor, and you don't know where the problem is, you know, it's not going to work out. The same with me. I never knew where the problem was. Actually, I kept on trying to fix my car and my brain and my thinking by trying to analyze it, figure it out, and then, you know, masking it with drugs, alcohol, food, all of these things I was trying to do, instead of realizing that the problem was me and my thinking. right? The thing was is that my thinking told me that the things on the outside were the problem. If I had more food, if I had more people liking me, if people would act only the way I wanted, and if I could direct the whole world and the whole play, win the lottery, I'd be happy. But they follow people who win the lottery, they follow famous movie stars, and the money and the success didn't make a difference. Actually, when you realize a lot of people who are very successful, sometimes they actually do the end of their own life because they say, well, what happened? I got all of this fame, all these people have all these fans, and yet I'm not happy. So there must be really something wrong with me, because they put their emphasis on that, not realizing that that really isn't going to make a difference in your life. It's nice to have them, but on the other hand, if they don't understand where the real joy and happiness comes from, then there's a real problem. Just like, a person can have $1 billion and they want $2 billion. It's never enough because it never satisfies. Fit spiritual condition made me think about, right? People go to the gym all the time and they build up the physical muscles. Well, we could do the same thing with spirituality, build up the spiritual muscles, and do the exercises every day, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And so really, to me, that's the whole answer, right? To this food addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, people addiction. It's the 12 steps, letting go and becoming more spiritual. But the amazing thing is, it's just like we were born with muscles in our body, we were born really spiritual. But we didn't develop them because what we did was we went, just like in our society, people don't have to do much physical labor at times, and even walking or whatever, so we became more weak in that aspect. So the same with our spiritual condition. In our society also, not only that, the physical went by the wayside, but the spiritual, because it was all about, again, when you grew up, it was looking to movie stars and the lottery or anything in life, and excelling. When you went to school, you had to get better grades, be good in sports, all of these things. So on our own self-will, by the way, that's what the main thing that it talks about in our program is being in our own self-will. You realize that our addiction, our drugs, alcohol, food, people are never going to satisfy us. If we have one person like us, we want 10. Actually, you could go somewhere if you're putting your dependence on people. 100 people will be somewhere, say at a meeting or something, and if one person doesn't like you, you'll be upset, right? If you liked the video so far, press the like and subscribe button. So when we get spiritual, and I think about it this way, if you go to a meeting, there's 100 people there, and 99 or 100 people don't like you, you could still sit there and smile and be happy. In the big book, it says on page 25, it says, we just smiled. We sat there and smiled. Whatever goes on around us, we could be insulated from us. Our thoughts about the food and we'll intuitively know. And the 10-step promises, I love it. It's like they wrote the book for Alcoholics Anonymous for the 10-step, because it talks about we have stopped fighting anyone or anything. Those are all those diet programs, fighting it, for we have not even sworn off, for being placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. All that wording. Right after the 10-step promises, it says, it is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. All right, that's really saying laurels are like a claim or things, diplomas, whatever it is, saying we did well. So we said, okay, we've already arrived, so we don't have to do anymore. We graduated. I don't know how many people felt they've graduated from these 12-step programs, but we really don't. And what we are headed for trouble if we do. For alcohol, we could say food or anything in our lives is a subtle foe. We are not cured, okay? You ever hear that term? People say, well, they're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve dependent on the contingent of our maintenance of our spiritual condition. So if I'm more spiritual and thinking in spiritual terms, I won't think in making food my higher power, drugs or alcohol, or people. I'll think of more things on the altruistic and spiritual plane and helping others. Altruistic means helping others in the spiritual plane. Come to our free Zoom meeting. See info in description. Now back to our video. Thinking of what God gave us in our spirituality, and realizing the falseness. An Hasidic rabbi once told me, he said, when I went to talk to him, I was having problems with life then, and I went and spoke to him, and he said, look, he says, go out and enjoy the world, but realize the falseness of it. Just that alone, if we realize the falseness, even that hunger we have, whatever it is, it's really coming from the ego and the self saying you're going to die unless you have, say, this drug, alcohol, or food, or whatever it is, or claims in life and people respecting you, whatever it is. All these things we're looking for are really false because it's momentary pleasure. So the whole relationship, this is a difficult thing I didn't understand. What is a spirituality? What is the 12 steps? What does it all have to do with our relationship to our addiction to food? And I started to realize it was everything. Because anything else I tried, I was doing on a self-will. How can the mind that brought me into this condition resolve the condition? Think about it that way. My best thinking got me here. So we do have an answer here. We have a solution to all, and it says in a big book, all our problems and the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And it goes on to say, we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. Thy will, not mine, be done. So again, my will is looking for respect, looking for all of these things in life, looking for momentary pleasure. I haven't used this example in a long time. The man who climbs Mount Everest spent years and years and tons of money trying to get to Mount Everest. He finally gets up on the top. And by the way, he got frostbite and all these difficulties. He had what you call momentary pleasure. Isn't that the same with our addictions and these other things in life? And when he got home, he got really upset because he realized when he looked on the internet, some people climbed the mountain 8 times and there were 7 other mountaintops in the world to climb. But the person I heard this from, it was a meditation center. He said, look, I could sit on my couch and be just as happy, but not only that, real bliss and happiness. Right? It's momentary pleasure. We're searching for those things and we're miserable until we obtain them, and then we're miserable afterwards. So doesn't that speak directly with our addiction to food? It's so we go out and we get all of these foods and we're miserable when we don't have it, and then right after we have it, we have the guilt, shame, remorse about what we did because it's getting us away. We become very finite and it drags us away. We come home, close the shades, have the food, and I used to have a drink in one hand, food in the other, whatever it was. And it just took me off course because the rest of the day we eat to live, not live to eat. Look at it that way. So the spiritual answers, when I had that mindset and change of thinking, also I started to realize when I became centered, the answer was these poisonous foods, processed foods. And I started to realize my body's God's temple. Here's another spiritual thing. Think about it that way. And we would praise it and be understanding that we have to put good gas in our car, right? Think of it that way also. And realize that we needed to put good fuel. And then the amazing thing is, once we have that mindset change, we'll have it no other way. The other way, with the diets and trying to resist it, the problem was I was pushing it away. What I was doing is giving it more strength. The things you resist, you give more power. The things you resist and think about, you make your higher power also. So I need a different way. I need a whole revolutionary change. The amazing thing is when I came into the program of food addiction and 12-step program, I came in, I wanted that diet program. I figured they'd give me a sheet of paper and I was out of there. But what happened was, the amazing thing was about this program, it resolved all the other issues I had. Any other addictions, and one big addiction is addicted to people, making them our higher power. But the problem is the food, the alcohol, the drugs, and people failed me every time. I was looking for my joy and happiness there, not realizing the real source is in here. So we can have what we call spiritual bread. During the day, you can enjoy, people have this philosophy where they get it from the sunlight or the outdoors and nature, they get the nutrients. I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but look, a lot of religions and philosophies, they fast. And why do they fast? Because they realize that the food, and when they wrote the Bible, they put gluttony in there, right? They realized this is something that we could, if we have the wrong mindset, right? We eat to live, not live to eat. And the thing is that we can make that a higher power. And that brings us down the road to being, again, making all about that and missing out. And then what happens is that when it's not there, we're miserable because we became convinced, and we think about it all day long because that's our road to happiness. So that perception change and realizing that I was powerless. And step 2 says it was restored to sanity through higher consciousness, right? Step 2. But it's saying in essence, we're insane. We always want things to be done suddenly, but yet when you think about physical exercise, people go for years to develop those particular muscles. But yet with a spiritual thing, we say, well, we got to do it overnight, or with this whole program with the food issue. We could do it like, educational, it's called in the big book, an educational variety. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, what happens is we don't achieve what we think, expectations or resentment's ready to happen. So we get to that point, we feel, well, we got to do it. But no, look at the physical exercise, how long it takes. So if we could change a little bit every day, it builds on itself.